Hello, plant friends. Hope you guys are all doing well and staying happy out there in real life land. In this episode, I try to answer the question, are mint monsteras real? I remember a while back, I used to think that mint monsteras, or what people were calling the variegated mint monsteras, were actually just a category or a pattern of a monstera albo. I thought all mints were just albos that had this lighter green minty pattern on their leaves. So I really did think that mints were different. Since then, I have been convinced otherwise, and I'm going to show you guys with some of my specimens on this episode. So hope you guys enjoy.
Alright guys, so let's start off with this plant. I think we can all agree that this is the variegated Monstera albo or alba. I think this one is formerly known as the Borsigiana. Now, I think with at least the most current classification that I'm aware of, it's called the Monstera deliciosa small leaf variegated type. But anyways, I think, we can all agree looking at the green parts and the very, very white parts that this is the albo or the alba. I think it's very easy when you're, looking at a plant like this when you have a lot of leaves to compare and you can see that, oh yeah, it's white, the pattern is very consistent, so it's much easier to identify a plant like this. So it's always really, really important to, when you guys are shopping around or looking, to see if, get the plants or ask to see the mother plant and see what the plant looks like with a lot of leaves. And, we'll get to the reason why in a bit. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys another Monstera, variegated Monstera albo. And so let's look at this particular leaf. So this particular leaf, you can see it's not as white, right? There are some specks of pure white, but a lot of it looks really, really green. So the question is this an albo or an alba, or is this, what people are calling the mint monstera? So, when I'm looking at a leaf like this, just this leaf by itself, not very mature, and also with this pattern with just one leaf, it's very, very hard for me to make that assessment, or anyone to really make that assessment. So I think it's much more important to, see if you can see what the other leaves look like as well. So let's look at the other leaves, right? So this plant is, very, very nice. I actually like that. There is quite a bit of the light green instead of just the pure white. The reason for this is that there's actually two layers of variegation. So the white parts basically mean that the top layer is variegated and also the bottom layer is variegated. The light green parts means that one side is variegated and the other side isn't. See? So does that make sense, right? The bottom side is not variegated. The top side is variegated. So that's why you see this light green. Whereas if there's both sides are variegated, white on the bottom and white on the top, then the whole thing looks white. But yeah, see, so this leaf, also looks quite minty. And let's look at this one. I'm sorry, the color is probably changing on you guys a little bit. So this one, also a little minty. So this guy as a whole is pretty minty, even though I know this guy is an albo, and I would not say that this is a mint monstera. I would, if I were to sell it, I would probably say, it's an albo or an alba, but it tends to have these, uh, these minty characteristics, at least so far. And again, right, the mintiness from this one basically means that it's because one layer is variegated. Okay, so on to the next one. This one is one of the mint monsteras that I have. So the mint monsteras, I think, has been reclassified as a variegated monstera deliciosa medium leaf is sort of what I understand it to be. But like let's see, if you look at each individual leaf, you can say, oh, it's just a minty variegated monstera, right? Like, especially if you look at like a minty variegated monstera albo, right? Like if you look at this one, and I just look at this one, I would just be like, oh yeah, it's an albo. It's very similar, um, right? It's very similar to an albo plant, but see, if you look at this leaf looks quite different, right? You can see that this area here, it's not because of layering, it's just because that's sort of how the plant is, right? Does that make sense, right? This is not because one side is variegated and the other side isn't, right? It's just like speckled and naturally speckled. So when I see something like this, and I also sort of know where I got this, and I know that it is a a mint, it's a lot more convincing, right? So it's like I'm like, okay, yeah, I can say that this is a mint. But again, if I look at a leaf like this, I am not convinced. If I look at a leaf like this, I am convinced, but it does require me to sort of look at the plant in its entirety, and also sort of know where it came from. So I know that a lot of people out there are looking for mints, and if you are looking for a mint, again, look at, ask to see pictures of each individual leaf, ask to see pictures of the entire plant. Make sure you're buying from a reputable seller. And the last thing I would say is that if I were buying, I really want to be convinced, right? Like if there were any doubt at all in my mind that what I'm getting is not a mint, but instead, a very minty albo, then I would keep shopping around. Okay, guys, so this is another example of a mint that I have. So you can see that this is quite the pattern for this one is quite a bit different than the albos that we have seen, right? It's this speckled variegation pattern. It isn't. It's consistent on sort of like both sides, and yeah, you can also see why people call this a mint monstera. It's quite minty, right? So I would say that, if I saw a leaf like this, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty convincing. And then my next question would be like, well, what do the other leaves look like? So let's see what this other leaf looks like. Yeah, right? Like this is very minty. The pattern is very nice, right? Speckled on this side. Also, let me see, turn this around, right? Speckled on this side as well. So yeah, I would say that if I saw this plant for sale as a mint, I would say, oh yeah, I'm pretty quite convinced. Um, Sometimes sports will look like this, variegated monstera sports. They will look something like this too. In fact, I think that a lot of sports actually kind of look very similar to mints. And hey, that's really cool. That's all good, all good. I love sports. I love mints. They're both great.
So, I hope that is enough to convince you guys that the albo and the mint are, very different plants. I have a high suspicion that mints is just like a I think it's just a well-known sport, right? I think it was a sport monstera that has been, you know, cultivated and groomed, and it's a lot more pervasive now. So that's sort of what I believe. Sort of it is now. All right, so that's all I have for this episode. Hope it was sort of useful for you guys. And oh, if you like the shirt, I have a couple plant t-shirts on my Teespree, which is somewhere around this video, probably down there. And then also, it's all the designs are also on my Amazon storefront. So if you like it, pick up a shirt, guys. And yeah, that's it. Happy planting.